Mickey Keenan.
Where do you work, officer?
I'm with the Midland State Police Department. Right now I'm mostly doing undercover work.
So could you tell us what that means on a day-to-day basis?
Well, the first thing is that I can't use my real name. Mickey Keenan is actually an alias from my last undercover investigation.
What was that investigation?
It was a bribery investigation of Chase Covington.
So Officer Keenan, let's walk the jury through how you went about that investigation.
Of course.
How did it start?
Well, my investigation began in July of 2013. That's when I went undercover at the Midlands Gambling Commission.
Who were you investigating?
Chase Covington, the chair of that commission, and Avery Bancroft, who was a local casino owner.
How long did the investigation last?
It went until April of 2015. And now that's when we arrested Chase Covington for accepting a bribe from Bancroft.
Sir, what kinds of evidence did you collect during that investigation?
Well, aside from the events that I saw myself, I collected things like recordings, physical evidence, and some documents, things like emails and bank statements.
If I showed you some of those items today, do you think you'd recognize them?
Yes, ma'am. I'm sure I would.
Your Honor, may I approach opposing counsel and the witness? I'm showing opposing counsel what's been marked as Exhibits 2, 8, 11, 19, and 22 for identification. They're all the same. I'm handing the witness the same. Would Your Honor like copies?
If you have them, yeah.
Sure. Here's 8, 11, 19, and 22. The witness has what's marked as Exhibit 2.
Okay. So you're starting with number 2?
He's going to walk through them in the order
Oh,
he
he
collected
has
them.
the court's copy of number 2.
Yes, Your Honor.
I see. Okay.
So Officer Keenan, let's walk the jury through these items in the order you collected them. What was first?
Well, that would be what's marked as Exhibit 8. It's a transcript of the first undercover operation that I performed in this case. And that was on March 31st.
What was second?
That's an email that I received from Chase Covington, Exhibit 19. Now, that email discussed talking with Bancroft about a proposal that Bancroft had in mind.
What was third?
Now, that's this one here, Exhibit 2. It's a napkin that I watched Bancroft write dollar amounts on and give to Covington during that meeting. Covington took that napkin and put it in his pocket.
Well, how do you know that's the same napkin?
Well, I recognized the size and shape of the napkin, and I also recognized the color of the ink. Now, the handwriting is the same, and the words are written in the same place.
What'd you collect next, officer?
That's this exhibit here, 22. It's an email that Covington sent me after that meeting.
And what's that final one, a marked Exhibit 11?
Well, this is actually a bank statement. It shows Covington's account activity from April of 2015.
Your Honor, we offer Exhibits 2, 8, 11, 19, and 22. With respect to Exhibit 11, there's a certification attached to it that both authenticates the document pursuant to Rule 902.11 and lays the foundation that it's a business record. Now, we're not offering that certification into evidence, just the attached bank statement.
Any objections?
Yes, Your Honor, to the email between Avery Bancroft and Chase Covington, hearsay, as well as the napkin that Avery Bancroft wrote on is hearsay as well.
Can we take those one at a time?
Yes,
In
absolutely.
regards to that email, I believe it's Exhibit 19 between Officer Keenan and the defendant. We're not offering any of Officer Keenan's statements to prove the truth of the matter asserted, just to show their effect on the defendant. And the email by the defendant is a statement by a party opponent.
Your Honor, if that is true, may we redact the statements made by Mickey Keenan so that it is only Chase Covington's statements that we are seeing?
Well, the court's going to need to put it into context.
Well, if it's not using McKean's statements for the truth of the matter asserted, it can be redacted.
Or we can give a limiting instruction to the jury as well.
That would be fine, Your Honor.
You have any other objections to either
Yes.
of those? First to the two exhibits we're talking about.
Yes, hearsay to the napkin that Avery Bancroft wrote on.
Yes, Your Honor. As for the napkin, that's marked Exhibit 2. Again, we're not offering Avery Bancroft statements to prove the truth of the matter asserted, just to show the effect on the defendant. And to the extent that there is any truth value in Avery Bancroft's statement, it's a statement by a co-conspirator under Rule 801 D2E.
You haven't really asked the witness what's in these documents yet, have you?
Yes, Your Honor. The witness just said that that napkin was something Avery Bancroft wrote a dollar amount on and handed to the defendant at that April 13th meeting, and then the defendant put it in his pocket. He's going to be going into more detail about the context of that meeting. We're just offering this napkin now so he can explain that.
Your Honor, if I may be heard,
Go ahead.
they are using this napkin for the truth of the matter asserted as a bribe, as that's a central piece in this case. Now, they're not going to be able to lay the foundation to show that because of this, Chase Covington accepted it as a bribe. They can only show that it's just a dollar amount on there, and therefore they haven't laid the foundation.
I'm going to uphold the objections at this point, and we'll see where we are after the witness testifies, if you want to offer it at that point.
Yes, Your Honor. So are the other exhibits, other than Exhibit 2, in evidence?
You have
I have no
objection?
objections to the other ones, yes.
He has
As
no
long as-
objections to the other ones are in evidence, but the ones he's objected to are not in evidence at this time.
Of course, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor.
So, Officer Keenan, let's walk through your investigation.
I could do that.
How'd you get involved in that first undercover operation on March 31st?
Well, I actually brought along a chart to help explain that.
Before we see that chart, could you tell the jury what it'll show?
Of course. It shows the 3 types of evidence I focused on in my investigation, so that I can help explain when and how I collected what I did.
What kinds of information will you be putting on that chart?
Everything I'll put up there is either something I saw myself or something from one of those documents that we just went through.
Your Honor, may Officer Keenan step down to use that chart?
You may, if that helps you explain it.
Yes, Your Honor.
Officer, what are we looking at?
Well, like I said, this is a chart showing the types of evidence that I focused on in my
Objection, Your Honor, to substantially more prejudicial than probative. May I be heard? Specifically, this payoff portion, they will not be able to bring any evidence forth to show that there was actually a payoff to Mr. Covington from Avery Bancroft. Therefore, it's substantially more prejudicial than it is probative for the jury to see that.
May I respond?
Go ahead.
Yes, Your Honor, that goes to weight, not admissibility. Officer Keenan is just walking the jury through the steps that he separated his investigation into. He's going to be explaining whether he found evidence of a payoff, not that there was one.
Overruled, there's really nothing on that chart just yet, so go ahead.
Yes, Your Honor.
So, Officer, you were saying?
Well, like I was saying, these 3 stages are the evidence that I focused on collecting in my investigation and the dates on which I did so.
So what's that first part?
Well, that's the proposal. And that's when Avery Bancroft and Chase Covington set up a meeting to talk about that casino license.
What'd you find there?
And that actually started with a phone call from Avery Bancroft to Chase Covington.
Could you explain to the jury how that conversation went?
Of course. Well, Bancroft called Covington and told him that she had a proposal she wanted to discuss. Now, Bancroft also said that she wanted to, quote, grease the wheels.
Objection, Your Honor, to hearsay.
Response? We're not offering Ms. Bancroft's statements to prove the truth of the matter asserted, just to show the effect on the defendant and how he responded to that during that phone call.
Your Honor, I don't think they can show anything that happened when responding to that phone call, besides a meeting maybe being placed later. That's not showing anything but the truth of the matter.
May I proffer? Your Honor, Officer Keenan is going to explain how Ms. Bancroft used those same words, grease the wheels, at a meeting several weeks later. And we're just offering this statement to show how the defendant responded to those statements.
Your Honor, have you heard?
Go ahead.
Now, it's important to differentiate Avery Bancroft's wants and Chase Covington's wants. Now, their burden here today is not to prove what Avery Bancroft wanted, what Chase Covington wanted. And they're not going to be able to do that with Avery Bancroft's statements alone.
Your Honor, opposing counsel is exactly right. We're trying to prove the defendant's wants through Ms. Bancroft's statements by how he responded to them. And to the extent that there's any truth value in that statement, it falls under a hearsay exception 801 D2E, statements by a co-conspirator, which we'll be laying the foundation for throughout this trial.
I'm overruled. Go ahead.
Yes, sir.
So, officer, what'd you hear?
Well, like I was saying, ma'am, Bancroft told Covington in that phone call that she wanted to, quote, grease the wheels. I'm going to put that under proposal for the jury.
What happened next?
That was that March 31st meeting that I was talking about earlier.
Well, how did that March 31st meeting go?
Well, it was me, Bancroft, and Bancroft's personal assistant. Now, Bancroft repeated to us what she'd said on February 13th, that she wanted to thank us for greasing the wheels. I'm going to put that under this first tile.
What happened after that?
That's the April 1st email that Covington sent me.
What did the defendant say in that email?
Well, in that email, Covington agreed to meet with Bancroft. And he told me that it's time I learned, quote, how things really got done in this office. I'm going to put that under proposal as well.
Well, officer, what about that second section, the press?
Well, that actually started with a meeting on April 13th.
Could you explain what kind of security there was at that meeting?
Of course. When I arrived to the meeting, there was a security guard standing outside. He patted us down and took our cell phones before we were allowed to go in.
What happened at that April 13th meeting?
Well, Bancroft wrote on that napkin we were discussing earlier. She wrote dollar amounts onto that napkin, and I personally watched her do so.
Your Honor, at this time, we offer Exhibit 2, that napkin.
Okay. Any
Objection,
objection?
Your Honor, once again to hearsay.
Overruled. Go ahead.
So, sir, could you explain that exchange?
Of course. Bancroft wrote yes equals $150,000 on that napkin and gave it to Covington. But Covington just slid it right back across the table. Bancroft then crossed out $150K and wrote in $250,000. Covington took that napkin and he put it in his pocket. I'm going to put that under price.
What happened after that?
Well, Covington actually emailed me later that day saying that he was much more on board after that April 13th meeting with the napkin. I'm going to put that under the napkin tile.
Now, officer, what about that third section, the one starting April 16th?
Well, the security footage that I reviewed from that day, April 16th, showed Bancroft and Covington meeting in a VIP room in Bancroft's casino.
Did you set up that meeting?
No, ma'am, I didn't. I had no idea that Bancroft and Covington were going to be meeting in the VIP room at all that day. Now I'm going to put that under the payoff category.
Objection to lack of foundation, Your Honor. May I be heard?
Go ahead.
Now, they're saying that Covington and Avery Bancroft met here specifically on this day. Now, he hasn't laid the foundation as to, is this actually a meeting that they planned, as he is saying here. And therefore, they need to lay that foundation to actually put that up there.
All that tile says was that Bancroft and Covington met without him. He certainly laid the foundation, he wasn't there.
Your Honor, he just stated that they met there on April 16th with purpose. Now, that is not something he can lay that foundation for. Now, this could have been a simple coincidence. He hasn't laid the foundation that this was a planned meeting.
I think all he's saying is that they meant there that they based upon the security tape, so I'm gonna overrule.
Yes, sir.
So, sir, what did you collect next?
And next was that bank statement we were talking about earlier. Now, when we collected that statement, we noticed that it had a $200,000 cash deposit on it.
And what happened after that?
Well, after we collected that bank statement, the next phase of our operation was on April 19th. And that's the day we actually arrested Chase Covington.
What did you find then?
Well, we didn't find any physical currency at the time of the arrest, but we did find an empty briefcase. Now, there were no pens, no documents, and nothing that we could see inside the briefcase. So, after we collected it, we turned it over to our forensic investigators for some additional testing.
Thank you, Officer Keenan. You can sit back down. No further questions.
Any cross-examination?
Yes, sir.
Go ahead.
Would opposing counsel like